back to Just Gonna Let Them Hate by Story Kitty 013. This is chapter 3. I'm the Black Widow. This chapter is mostly in Natasha's point of view, so a lot of it's going to be in Russian. It is translated, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because a lot of it is in Russian. I cannot pronounce it. I've tried. I'm horrible at the pronunciation, so I'm just going to read what it says as the translated parts instead of what is Russian, because I've tried doing it. I literally can't. I'm sorry about that. But let's get into it. 16 years ago. 1, 2, 3. Shots rang out on the third count. The thick Russian accent bouncing off the brick walls. A row of girls, no older than 15, lined up against the wall, reflecting the perfect pictures on the other side of the room. Dark shadows casted over their stoic faces, watching as the freshly appointed Black Widow made a final shot to earn the honored title. Duman watched over her on a tall balcony. Who had been proctoring the test did not move one bit, just as she had been when she first came in. Never made any emotion to indicate the test was over, never writing down the test progress. If a contestant messed up even a little, the test would be over, and the participant would fail. There was no room for even the slightest error in the red room. Acceptable, Widow, she dressed, never moving an inch, but her voice rang out, as powerful as a tidal wave. The red-haired 22-year-old lowered her weapon, but not look up as she acknowledged the page. Praise was not meant to be acknowledged. It was part of the test. Praise was a distraction from fulfilling your ego and making one arrogant and overconfident in one's ability and competence. Praise was just a means to use to seduct an opponent into failure of respect and admiration. Praise was a tool to be used against enemies. The man next to the dresser did not look pleased. He did not know any better because he was not from the Red Room. He was a potential alliance, and if he was to officially be allied with the Red Room, then he would have to know his place. But for now, they allowed the German Hydra official to speak his incompetence. He was allowed to frown his brow and speak his feasible concerns to the director in German. This mission is crucial in our alliance. Are you positive of your candidate? The director did not humor him with an answer and turned to the chipped wood door at the back of the balcony. The heavy doors opened and the red-haired woman rocked swayed. She followed the binge walls with the flickering lights that grew more arc in between the lighting fixed on the wall with no doors, passing by the same wooden, normal-sized door to a point where you thought that there was no vague lining or end to them, but led to a red door that stood out, breaking the dull pattern, which continued on the other side of it. That is where she stopped and knocked once before waiting. There was no indication that there was heard or visible, but after exactly 10 seconds of waiting, with her hands behind her back, standing straight as a board, Natalia opened the red door. The director was there on her plain desk, no emotion on her face as she stood straight at Natalia, directly in eye. The man from earlier stood to the side of the desk, his body turned more directly towards the director than her. He looked at her as if though thrown a bit of a side eye, and his expression was a little late to be skilled from his almost angered and irritated expression into a scowling neutral face that had only a bit more emotion than the director and Natalia's stoic, solemn expression that had no emotion away, almost as if they were robots. Then there was a man that hadn't been in the room, against the wall that casted shadows over his still form in grey and black. His long brown hair, a mask that covered his mouth. His eyes were lifeless as Natalia's as he stood attention, never back, never touching the wall, and his hand at his side. She noticed his left arm was made of metal, and a red star on his bicep. He did not look at her, just straight ahead, as if he was a ragdoll, awaiting orders. Natasha distracted him quickly, as she expected to do with any unknown entities around her. He was American, around 24, closed off, attentive. He had a Hydra symbol on his clothes, so did the German man. The director was talking about alliances, and this was a mission room. Not just any mission, a mission room. The room where all the high-ups got their missions they were assigned to. The Red Room, assassins and soldiers. The room where the Black Widow got her mission directly. Natasha felt dread pour in her gut. She did not like group missions. She was better solo. The other teammates only held her back, and she was very good at following the Red Room's only rule. The companions. Other teammates only held her back, and she was very good at following the Red Room's #1 rule. The companions are for the weak. It was the rule she based her entire life around. She cut off or killed any of her connections outside of the Red Room. She made herself the #1 assassin, the Black Widow, in the Red Room. She had no emotional attachments or connections, and it made it easy to be lifeless, easy to make obey, because all of her morals were dashed. It made it easy to kill with no personal attachments, but on a group mission, she had to interact in ways that weren't deceiving or seducing her target. She had to work together with other people. And 99% of the time, they were more emotional than her. They had connections and wanted to make them with her. She made sure to distance herself as much as possible, saying God around him, never talk to them unless it was to discuss the mission, and only if it was imperative. No nonsense, no side conversations, no unnecessary interactions. If they didn't get the plans on the first time they discussed it, then they would die, and Natasha could improvise. She never depended on anyone else during a mission, especially a team mission. She always assumed that they would fail, or be incompetent, or die. She made auxiliary plans for every scenario she could think of. Natalia, you're the newly appointed Black Widow of this Red Room. A sort of congratulations are in order, the director said, in near perfect English accent, only toned with slight Russian one. English was a border language that was spoken fluently amongst Hydra in the Red Room, so she already supposed to know that she is to speak mostly English on this mission, speak English when she was answering questions verbally in this brief room. She slightly tilted her head in reply, but just a notch fact, face never showing emotion. The director's lips formed an amused smile in the sway of her control. The director was the only person who could show such emotion. She never did. When she did, it was to emphasize her anger or displeasement. She never showed that she was pleased. The Hydra official in the head-in was not, and spoke with such insolence that defied her director's decision, especially for a second time. Natalia was genuinely curious on how this man was still alive. She is new. She will not be significant for this mission. She does not have experience in her job. Well, for this, the German man went on his tirade. His great German accent that laced his tone was thick and ugly. She never liked that language. It felt bad. It left a bad taste in her mouth. The director cut off his venomous flow of words with a harsh slap of a paper on her oak desk. The sound resonated, and her smile had completely vanished. A hint of irritation pinched her face in a way that a normal person would even notice. She's the most obedient and strong of all candidates, and the only one competent enough to pass the exam on her first try. Natalia is the most acceptable for this mission, for she has never failed a mission assigned by the Red Room before. She will suffice the needs of this mission perfectly, the director informed the German man, never losing her composure but allowed the heat and authority in her voice to assert dominance over him. She then turned back to Natasha. The German man shut up. She looked the fleshy widow in the eye and held her gaze a deadly stare as she informed in a voice that threatened that anything less than perfection would be unacceptable, on a level that would get her severely punished. "You will not fail." Talia nodded once and surveyed her as she said, "Yes, madam," in a firm voice that did not show weakness or defiance. It promised for what she could do. The director nodded in approval once before continuing the debrief. "This mission is an extended mission in Italy through Germany. You will be assassinating delegates that may have future influence on the country, but have none of now. Your target list will be given to you upon departure," she said formally, never breaking her eye contact from the widow. Black Widow. "This mission is also important because beyond assassination influence, this is an alliance that will be maintained if all goes accordingly. You'll be partnered with the Hydra's main asset," the director said, barely gesturing to the soldier with a metal arm. Natasha did not take her eyes off the director. She did not even turn to glance at the man. She only heard the man stand attention by turning towards the director and stepping away from the shadows and stood a few paces behind her, locking his hands behind him, show confidence. "It is a partnership that we have been working on for decades. This mission's success will be the driving factor. Hydra's new asset and the Red Room's new Black Widow. Do not mess this up," she warned, her tone suggesting that this would be something greater than she informed Natalia, but it was not Natalia's place to question her director. She left the soldier following her. Her next orders did not have to be said. She was to get ready and leave immediately. She got to her quarters, but never in a rush, closed the doors, packed a small beige backpack she acquired from Iran. She did not have design preference. The accessories would only be used as for memento and a tool on missions. When she walked out of the room, the soldier was standing by her door, looking confused as if he did not know what to do, but in a way that he did not have any emotions on his face as she stared at the opposite window, wobbling. She wanted to scoff, but she kept a neutral face as she made her way to the transports that they would be using. Passing him by without a second glance, he followed compliantly. They did not talk to each other while traveling. They did not talk on the ride to the airport, in which she drove and he took the front seat. They did not talk to each other at checkout. She only talked to the checkout lady at the airport. They did not talk on the flight. They sat while listening to the usual noise of seating airing. They did not talk on the way to the hotel. They walked because it was near short distance, and to keep to the shadows and map out the surrounding areas for the mission. They did not talk at the hotel, as they silently claimed their spots and unpacked. As soon as they got to the one-bed hotel, she sat on one side of the bed and placed her pack on the floor, claiming the side as hers. They only got one room with one bed to avoid suspicion. It was unsaid that they would be posing as a couple. It was not on a honeymoon or anything. There's a simple vacation. There was no need for couples to request separate rooms or two beds, and saying that they were co-workers on a business trip was too complicated. No one asked questions this way. Digging out a pad to show their first assignment of 25, the missions were given on a location basis, and there were 25 assignments that would be unlocked as soon as they were in each city, and locked again once they leave the directed city. Currently, they were all under the incomplete tab. Once the assignment was complete, they would get a new source of information and the necessaries to travel to the next location. She estimated that it would be 1 kill per week. That would be 25 weeks. The mission details were very clear, but not to give too much information, as the name, location, and time. That way they had to kill. Their first target was open-ended, and there'd be no building plan, so that means that they had to scope out before they went in. The soldier was quiet as he sat on the other side of the bed, back towards her, sitting straight up, waiting for orders. It was clear that she would be leading this mission. She didn't find herself wondering about the mysterious man. She believed the expression went, "Curiosity killed the cat." It was one of her flaws, however, to be maybe too curious about things she believed she had no right to understand. It took a lot out of her teenage years to suppress her instincts, and still took a lot of self-control to keep those thoughts away. The asset did not try to make any emotional connection to her. It was a bit off-putting. but it made her job easier not to get detached. So she just shrugged it off. They had a mission. Week 1, she didn't talk. The lights turned off and they went to sleep on the first night. Both of them sleeping into light, less restless sleep, only inches apart and not touching. They made no noise as they slumbered. Did not move awake. There was no threat. The next morning, they woke up exactly 6. They got ready quickly and went out to scope out their target's location of his immediate death. They only talked when they needed to, as not to look suspicious. It was in code about the mission. They spoke in Italian. Natalia was pleasantly surprised when the accent wasn't as mindless as she first thought. He gave important input about the plan that they were apparently expected to make on their own. More technical things, that is. He never said much, and she talked only slightly more than him, only to show him plans and her routes. If he had adjustments, he would make them. Then they would burn the papers to erase all evidence once the plan was solidified. The target was killed by the end of the week. Week 2, they were in Sicily. They were in Sicily, not far from where their first mission was, just across a strait. They took a boat there, and the ride was only 2 hours. Neither of them talked. They didn't really need a plan. They only needed not to be caught. Unlike the last mission, they were to make it as quietly as possible. This time, there was a note under the name, location, and time. The note said that they were to make it The note said they were specifically to make it noticeable, but not to be noticed. The asset took the reins on this one by building a time bomb out of some scrap metal he found and taking gunpowder he packed. She had to admit, out of the little resources they had, it was a pretty decent bomb. She never wrote really an ship, but the thought did cross her mind. They blew up the delegation center. The target was week 3. She was bringing toast up to the room in Barcelona. It was far from the second kill, which was plastered all over the news. The delegation building bombing killed 20 people and injuring 103. Out of those 20, only one was a target. She couldn't find herself to mourn 19 others who fallen. She hadn't had those kind of thoughts in so many years she could barely remember them. "You've crumbs on your shirt," he said in American. It threw off slightly because that was the first time he ever spoken to her and gave her information that was not about the mission. It was an invitation of companionship. It was just the fact that she acknowledged her brushing it off, not offering her thanks. But she couldn't help but notice that behind the gruffness and an accent only a Native American, she believed it sounded like a Brooklyn accent, but that part of the accent was very noticeable, and his voice was a tiny gentleness that the same barely noticeable confusion that always laced his voice when he talked. It wasn't like the German soldier. In fact, he quite liked it. She quite liked his voice. She saw a woman in her head the next day. Week 4, "I'm going out," she said one night, and he got up and followed her into the woods that was near the hotel in a small town in Scotland. She was going out to train, not to lose her edge. She hadn't expected him to come with, but she didn't deny him in his silent invitation this far. The default fighting styles were complete opposites. She used her speed and her agility and flexibility. He mostly blocked and used his strength and precise hitting that would do a lot of damage. They didn't go easy on each other, and that was why she liked it. No one would go easy on them in the real world. It was best to train with no handicaps. They sparred in silence for hours until they were both drenched in sweat, sneaking back in the hotel near 3 a.m., sneaking past the half-sweet receptionist, not letting anyone notice as they slipped back into the room and took a shower and got ready. 2 days later, they hung a man in early morning under a monorail track. Week 5. "I am Natalia," she told him, and he looked up. They stared at each other in silence for a long time. His expression flashed in a bit of surprise before settling back into a blank stare. That the longer she looked at it, noticed it wasn't so blank. It held a swirl of emotion and memories that she that she looked at him. Now that she really looked at him, visibly suppressed. She never told him her name in the month that they've been working together. She felt that it was appropriate, considering that 20 weeks they were going to be spending together. They were going to be undercover at least once in that time. I do not have a name, he informed in a crisp tone. She did not feel sorry for that. She respected him too much to pity him. Natasha pitied no one. They called me soldier. You need a name for this mission, she said, but she didn't offer a suggestion. He hummed in it. Affirmation, agreeing with her. It took time to think of one. How about active? She raised her eyebrow. She didn't like it. Lavian for asset. It wouldn't work. They were in Lavia. That was basically like going to America and saying he was named Asset. No, she responded. He gave her a cocky smirk, one he probably wouldn't dare to do when his handlers could see, one that showed more emotion than Talia had ever been shown in her entire life. It was so sudden and shocking and overwhelming that Natasha couldn't stop a quiet gasp from her mouth. He faltered a bit before continuing. Krasnoni. Interesting. Her shock was gone and replaced with curiosity. She suppressed. If he could be cocky, then she could be curious. Russian? She asked, letting amusement and interest cautiously enter her tone. He looked a bit shocked, but for less time than she had, and he nodded. She liked it. It didn't matter that they showed more emotion in the past 30 seconds than they had in an entire life. The bosses weren't here to call out or punish them, and it wasn't like they were going to tell them. If Talia was honest, it was kind of nice. He strangled someone the next day, week 6. Natalia. He said her name for the first time in the dead of night. As they were laying on the hotel bell in Munich, they were sharing a bed, as they always did, inches apart, not touching. She liked how he said her name, his Russian accent being nicely fused with his gentle English. Grasso, she responded in her own tone, tended with slight affection. She knows when he knows if he's noticed he didn't say so. Do you ever think that there's something else out here besides this? He said in almost childlike tone, innocent and unassuming. This was dangerous territory he was descending into. Even questioning their existence and their meaning to live was dangerous, would warrant immediate punishment. She stared at the ceiling for a moment and couldn't help but contemplate her answer. It shouldn't be simple. It should be simple, not for us, she responded. It was the simplest way to put it. They had no lives other than being the organization's tools for a small part of a bigger picture that they could not know. When she was younger and more naive, she thought it was like a jail. She was a prisoner made in something that wasn't human. She wasn't wrong. They drowned a night chill and the next morning. Week 7. I can't remember, he muttered to himself in a frustrated tone, having more emotion than it should. Natalia looked up from a book that she was reading in a chair. He was sitting on the bed, back facing her, his hands grabbed his knees so hard she saw his fresh hand turn white. She shouldn't say anything, but she does. What? She asked, simply and quietly, letting gentleness creep into it as to be known threatening. For the first time, he seemed upset. Before he broke up in Hydra, he said, and turned slightly to her as she put down her book but didn't get up. He looked down at his arm. The only thing I can remember is that I didn't have this. He gestured to his metal arm to indicate what he was talking about. She didn't have a response for it, so she didn't say anything at all. But she did attempt to send some silent support, not offering up any apology. It wasn't her fault, but she did feel a flash of anger blazing within her. Anger that she hadn't felt since she was 16. Anger at this system, at this organization for not treating them better. She hadn't had these foolish thoughts that she deserved better since she was a kid, but she felt Krasnaya deserved better than how Hydra had been treating him. They drowned two women in the cold water of the Mediterranean Sea. 8 weeks later. No, 8 weeks. I like the way you fight. It was the first time they talked during a sparring session, which was sort of strange because the only noise that were heard was the nocturnal creatures and dull sounds of the city. The only sound that they made were flesh on flesh or metal on this, and their slightly heavy panting. It was nearly 2, and they were just about to end their sparring session with one final round before heading back to the hotel in Zermatt. She had took him off guard and went to the lake, smirking as he went down, and then jumped on his falling figure, stabbing him with a freshly sharpened knife to his throat. "Oh yeah?" she asked, with a hint of amusement at his chagrined face. For a second, the myth look disappeared and replaced with something else. "Yes," he confirmed after a while of a nod. She smiled a bit more, never leaving her position as she leaned towards him. "And what exactly is it about my son that you like?" she asked, almost seductive way. It wasn't seductive because she wasn't trying to flirt, just tease. Letting her curiosity get the best of her and took over her words. "It's almost like a dancer," Krasaya replied, and Natalia scoffed. The Red Room was its theme was a ballet studio. The dancers were as practically fit as one could be. Ballet took a lot of self-control and hard work. Physical prowess was everything when it came to training. Being called a dance was supposed to be an insult for Natalia. It left a bad taste in her mouth. It reminded her of the Red Room and the torture she had to go through to get where she was. She couldn't focus on the past because the mission didn't require it. But somehow, when Krasnaya complimented her, when he said that she looked like a dancer, she knew it was his American way of saying she was graceful and elegant. In Americanized Russian ballet was an untouchable art form. She couldn't help her smile. They killed a tenant in the room just above theirs when they got back. "Week 9, Natasha," he said, and she looked up from the plans she was making for the next target in Berlin. He had been looking at her for a while, just staring. It hadn't been unnatural for Krasaya to stare at her, or the wall, or just anywhere really. So she had ignored it. Had she looked up, she would have seen the look of constipation on his face, like he was trying to figure something out. "It's easy to say in English," he explained. She gave a look of understanding expression, but it hid her smile by ducking down to continue making a plan. She liked it. She sliced a 42-year-old woman's throat 2 hours later. Week 10. I like cats. It was a random and weird thing to say, completely inappropriate for a woman's status and in a situation this dire. Yet she couldn't find herself to be regretful of the words, especially as Krasai gave her baffled expression that showed he was completely lost on how to reply. They were currently in the vents. They were really big vents in the convention centre in Edinburgh. Their target was 2 rooms away, and the vents were big enough for both of them to fit, so they had a clear shot of their target as he walked by. "I think I like dogs," he finally replied, and Natasha let out a small, quiet laugh. Of course, that's how he replied. He looked at her again and smiled. "You seem like a dog type," she observed, and she, in a million years, would never expect him to reply with, "I like the way you laugh." It took Natasha by surprise. She didn't know why. Her heart stopped and she froze. She didn't know the feeling that was crawling up her insides. It was fuzzy and warm. That was probably a red flag, a warning sign that she was emotioning. But she couldn't help but feel like it came upon her. She didn't even know the target was dead until she said a word. Week 11. You remind me of someone. He said it to her as they were eating breakfast in a little cafe in near her. They were trying to listen on their target. but he had gone to the bathroom and they made no move to follow. Best to keep suspicion off them. They had already had all the information they needed, but couldn't find it in themselves to go. She looked up from her biscuit with a raised eyebrow as he hurried to add, I think you remind me of someone, a woman, he said hurriedly. Natasha nodded in understanding. She didn't give any indication for him to continue, but didn't speak as she munched on a breakfast. Someone before he moved his middle arm almost slightly. They talked on and off about this for a while. Krasnodar not remembering anything, not even his name. Hydra not telling a thing about his past him or anyone else. They used his melon arm as an indicator of timestamps. What do you remember about her? She asked, having almost a foreboding feeling in his gut. She shifted. She did not like the way that the thought of talking about her made Natasha feel. And she didn't even know why she was feeling the way she did. She just knew that it was probably stupid, so she scolded her expression into a neutral one. Krasnodar didn't seem to notice. I remember she had brown hair. I also remember she was a strong individual. I usually remember her with a blonde boy, I don't know. Every time I look at you, I get reminded of her. Krasnodar said, and shifted a little, like you have the same air about you. You two seem very different otherwise, but strong and independent is what I'd call her. You reminded me of that. He shrugged. Do you like this characteristic? She found herself asking without thinking about it. He looked at her oddly before shrugging. I do, but I don't feel the same way when I think of her as I do with you. He sounded confused, and Natasha found herself in the middle of relaxing and tensing up more. She didn't know why. He was just telling her what she remembered, like he always said. She strangled the target in an alleyway on his way to week 12. She kissed him. She doesn't know why she did that of all things, but her target was looking directly at him. They were on a corner of a shopping mall in Mons. They sat on the bench waiting for their target to finish purchasing a very expensive watch. They must look suspicious because he looked over, narrowed his eyes a bit, and he averted his eyes and hurriedly walks away. Krasnodar seems just as surprised as the target if his eyes widening to the size of dinner plates or anything to go by. She waited till the target was outside to part lips, looking disdainfully away from Krasnodar's shocked, murky blue eyes. Her heart shouldn't be pounding this hard. She had to do what she had to do to avoid it. Suspicion, but kissing Krasnodar the best way, was kissing Krasnodar the best way to go about it. It was an instinct, as in the moment the decision was weird. She never kissed anyone to maintain a cover before, but somehow this was different. She couldn't help but feel like this wasn't just to maintain the cover. She actually quite enjoyed it, which wasn't good because she shouldn't have enjoyed anything. Why did you? He whispered, body only tensing after she broke them up. He looked at her, and she only looked when her target left, not paying any mind at his attention there, but bearing into her. He didn't seem upset or mad, but she felt that he was confused. She was too. He saw us, she explained herself, and glanced only for a second at his still tense and unmoving form. Visit cold displays of affection makes people uncomfortable. She couldn't help but smirk at the light red dusting his cheeks, barely noticeable. She got up to finish her job. The target never knows he was dead. Target never even knows he was dead. Week 13. This tastes like shit. He scrunched up his nose at the breakfast she made him. There was a kitchen in their hotel in Lyon. They didn't feel like eating out today and had more complex mission to complete. They needed more internet mission and they only had 2 days to make it. She had made a drink with kale and chia seeds she had found in the market. She boiled that combination in the water and gave it to him. As he continued with the pan, she often turned away. It's good for you, she insisted, and he pushed the cup away from him. It looked like sewer water in the dark. He wrinkled his nose again as if the cup offended him. I think you're trying to poison me, he muttered, and she snorted. He had a pouty look on his face, and it was kind of cute. Wait, what? No, that was the exact wrong thing to think. She couldn't do this. She couldn't have feelings of affection of any kind of for Krasnodar. that would get her killed. That would get him killed. Stop being dramatic and drink it, she found herself saying in an almost scolding tone, even if she was going through a essential crisis inside her brain and heart. How was her heart? Fucking borrow this now. They poisoned a lady with real poison that evening. Week 14. I could never forget you. Natasha. Krasnune looked at her seriously as they stalked out a woman with red heels in the car at the edge of a small town, 50 miles out of Berlin. It came out of nowhere. Natasha looked at Krasnune, a bit shocked. It was like when he did something, just like he did when she did something odd. It must have shown it, because his face softened from the serious expression it was. She didn't know why the hell she felt lighter, but she felt a flutter in her chest, and it made her nervous and relaxed at the same time, but mostly all of it. She felt warm and comforted. She found that she didn't mind the feeling nearly as much as she was trying to, but she couldn't find it in herself to care. With Krasnune, with all of her training and self-control over her emotions throughout the winter, she could breathe and relax and feel, because Krasnune doesn't judge her or yell at her when she does something. It's okay, because he doesn't care about self-control nearly as much as he should. Either. I gowned on it. She smirked at him. He smiled back. The feeling made her feel a sense of happiness. She didn't fight it this time. She found letting herself feel emotions wasn't nearly as bad as she thought. Not with... They killed a woman with a noose. Week 5. He was blonde. They were about to go to sleep when... had a major flashback. He fallen off the bed, his eyes went wide, his breath picked up to the point he was hyperfixating. Natasha went on autopilot and did what she thought was a natural way to deal with this. She instantly took him back to the bed, sit across from him in a cross as he mirrored her breathing. Then he tentatively requested to talk it out. As if she would say no, she scoffed at the insecurity and told him to spill, because that was what she was going to tell him to do anyways. He smiled at her with a small, painful but grateful smile. She had her own small, easy smile just for him too. They talked for hours about a small boy that was always sick and could barely breathe. Natasha, guess he had asthma, and he had a series of flashes, and told her about the boy put newspaper in his shoes to be taller. Most of it was painful. Sometimes he laughed painfully at them. Almost all of them had that small boy with newspaper in his shoes. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't put a name to the face. Krasnune said that the memories were painful because it seemed like he had a good life before the metal arm. It didn't seem at all like he was working for Hydra. Natasha never felt more hatred to the organization than she just did. They strapped a man to the bottom of a boat and started sleeping. Week 16. Do you ever just wonder if we could have a normal life? She asked in dead night, staring at the ceiling of the motel in Ankara. He didn't say anything to her, but she could tell that he wasn't asleep. They both couldn't sleep. She guessed it was one of those nights. Those nights where their thoughts were too loud to go to sleep, when they screamed what they were doing wrong and that they could have a life outside of this. Nights where they imagined what life would be like if they never were a part of their respected organization. She couldn't help but notice that being with Krasnune increased those thoughts. She also noticed how he snuck his way into her fantasies. "I do," he whispered into the darkness. He inched closer to her, and she did the same to him, breaking the streak of not moving while in bed. She couldn't help but think it'd be nice and wonderful if she could feel like they were close, the contact all together. But for now, 2 inches were close enough for her. "What do you think it'd be like?" she asked in the same quiet tone, barely making noise. If he was anywhere else, it would been like the question hadn't even been asked. Better than this, he predicted, not changing the volume. She couldn't help but agree with the assessment, because if they lived a normal life, they would be happy and have emotions with no replications. If they had a normal life, they could see smiles from each other. If they had a normal life, then she could touch with no reserves. She snapped a neck 12 hours later. Week 17. Hey Nat, did you get the report? She paused at the name. She'd never been addressed so informally before. Natasha was already pushing a bit, but showing that name even further was unprofessional. That was something friends do. Normally she would panic, worried that her training had fled her, that she was closing herself even more, that she had to close herself even more, but seemed to be the expectation to nearly all of her rules. She didn't mind the thought of being companions, and she didn't care at all by now. What did you just call me? She asked, hoping that she heard him correctly, hoping that he too dashed all of his morals be affectionate of her. She smirked as she saw the brush that he brushed a little bit, but didn't repeat himself, nor did he deny that he'd given her a pet name. She wished she could give him one, but she didn't know his name. She found herself thinking that he would find out, that she'd give this information, if not by him, then for herself. So she too could call him a ridiculous pet name. They decapitated the talking near a lake. Week 18. You're an idiot. It's not my fault. It just froze. Nat, he said as he adjusted his arm on the wrong way again. He landed all wrong when sorting, and in the morning they had found some gears have shifted out of place. God damn it, he cursed on his breath, adjusting the gears again, and she laughed at his misery. Don't laugh, this fucking hurts, he groaned. And she knew he was just being dramatic. This had happened before. It was a big deal if he put everything back in public praise before he shipped to them again. That only made her laugh more. Don't do stupid things like try to beat me, she shouted back with a teasing smile, and he looked at her exasperated, and then went back to poking at the screwdriver. But a screwdriver in his arm wrung his eyes. He hit the kill spot on a 35-year-old man at dawn. Week 19. I've always wanted a family, he said, in the front seat as they drove through country roads to get to the next destination. She wasn't taken surprised by his random notes that he made. If remembered something, then he'd tell her, and she would respond, hoping to encourage more of the Emmy to come out. But this one took her by surprise. She didn't take her eyes off the road, but her left hand gripped the steering wheel as her light settled on his left arm comfortingly. She couldn't help but feel remorseful for that one little fact. She never thought about having a family. It never seemed in the cards for her. She was indifferent to it before she met. Now that the thought was a pleasant but one far away, she could never have a family, and neither could he. Not anymore. It seemed to be communicated over to him as he slumped. He knew it too, but whoever he was before would have that, and that probably made it more painful. Her heart clenched, because as much as she wanted to be truly happy and have his old life back, that life would have taken him away from her. And she felt that she was willing to sacrifice whatever those feelings were for that. As long as he was happy. They rammed a pole through a woman's head near the afternoon. Week 20. I never knew my parents, she finally told him as he looked at her with a raised brow. She shifted from side to side. They were standing in line to the Mentos so they could get a place where the kill could take place. She never really cared about her parents before. She never gave them much thought, even when she was younger, but being with brought out a lot of things she never thought twice about. Even killing people seemed to lose its luster. He smiled at her a little, easing her nerves and grabbing her hand gently with his male one, a silent form of support that they hadn't spoken about, but was still a recurring thing now. She didn't mind it in the least. Well, I don't either, he said, stalking her, and she rolled her eyes, but couldn't help the smile as she jabbed him in the ribs. She never let go of his hand until they were in front of the line. She strangled a man with trying at 8. Week 21. I don't think I agree with the Red Room. He looked up at her with a panic look flashing of his eyes as he nearly dropped his muffin. They were in a night cafe, this one in London, eating breakfast because her cooking was shit and was way better, but they didn't have ingredients. His face settled on a more serious expression before he answered with, I don't agree with Hydra either. He made it, and she had a feeling he'd say that, especially after all they'd done to him. This is dangerous, I think, she replied with solemn tone. He rolled his eyes but didn't look confused. Then why'd you bring it up? He asked in almost exaggerated tone. She shrugged. Because it's important to know. He didn't respond to that, nibbling away at his muffin again, but the air around him was speaking volumes when they didn't. It was tense but relaxed. It felt right. They strapped the man to a subway tracks in between the tunnels. Week 22. What if we don't go back? It was even more dangerous to think about defying the Red Room's expectations, but it was fantasy. It was a fantasy, though. She couldn't help but want that after all these weeks, want was dangerous for both of them. They didn't have the luxury of that, and leaving wasn't an option. They were trapped in a messed up system that broke them. The system that said that they would fix them when they didn't know that whatever was broken, when they were too young or too confused to understand. She warned gently. They had talked about this before, but not so blatantly. She didn't panic anymore when they did, and neither did he, but they kept a closer look on the area around them, just in case anyone listening, anyone that would rat them out. No, I'm serious. Natalia, she sniffed him, because he never called her Natalia, only when he was really serious or mad. They had played with this idea. She thought it was a mutual fantasy. She never let it be anything more than that. If she did, then she would have hopes, and hopes was something that she absolutely could not allow herself to feel. Hope was decrepit. She was firm in that opinion that not even could change that. Hope was a downfall. It was the ultimate thing that would tear her apart if she knew that. They'll find us. He doesn't argue with her, but she had a feeling that his sadness is in the rejection. He understood the logic, but couldn't hold back the want. She sympathized with it, but she couldn't let have false hope. It would break his already broken mind. They drowned the man's kid. They watched the drowned man's kids find their father. Week 23. I think I love you. It was said with such soreness and confidence that she stood in front of the man she proclaimed it to. She knew that she never had these feelings before, never had any feelings of affection for really anyone, so she could not be 100% sure. But she knew what she was feeling was intense. She knew that she wanted more than just friendship. Over the past months, she had grown a bond with a bond she did not want to break. A bond she wanted to hold on to forever. I think I love you too, he responded, taking her hand gently. He said it in a quieter tone than with such conviction. Both of them did not know what love was, but to them it did not matter. She wanted to love. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter of the Red Room or Hydra. It didn't matter if she was assassin or it didn't matter if couldn't even remember his own name. They would love each other in their own way, and she doubted anyone could stop them, even if they were a million miles away. Even if he forgot her, he would always remember her love. He'd never forget love. When they kissed this time, it wasn't because they were spotted. They slit the throats of their target quite quickly that night. Week 24. It was a quickening thing. Something that they didn't think about. It just happened like an instinct. They didn't discuss it beforehand or anything. They just went at it. It was unplanned, but it felt right. They didn't trust, never learned how, but it was some severance of trust in them. This was a crucial thing they had. This relationship was built based off of trust and blood, a silent comfort, aggressive spotting, the mutual lack of knowledge of the organization's desire. and confusing thoughts of mutual wants. This isn't a good idea. She wasn't sure who said it, but she couldn't help but agree. She also disagreed because apparently her body was showing otherwise. He also seemed to feel the same way, but like her, they just didn't care. No one would find out that it was spontaneous. How could they? There was no test. None were there any way to find out or evidence that they indicated this. None in any way the organization could find out, and they certainly wasn't fussing about this. But they had only 1 week to do this. She didn't know much. Her mind went blank, and she tried to remember the indication of this. She wasn't sure who had said what, but she acknowledged it. She wasn't sure if anyone would find out, but she doubted it. She also knew that how she was feeling and she felt her love for him and him for her connived inside together in such a intense passion. As she lay there with on top of him, she couldn't help but think that this was natural. She couldn't find herself to be worried about her director's opinions on punishment that would occur for both of them if this was ever found out. He didn't seem to care. She found that she didn't care either, because it felt right, more right than anything in her entire life. They hung a 25-year-old man the next night, week 25. It was week that was ripped away, out of her sight forever. She would never see him again. She couldn't say anything. She could not do anything. In the knowledge that they would both be punished if they defied their boss's decision, the knowledge that it would arise suspicion and mistrust amongst their separate peers, she watched him go, standing bored and right until with her hands behind her back. He walked the same walk he did when he came in, the following social walk. She believed only now that she hated that walk. Her face never gave any to emotion, neither did his. She couldn't help but feel that she wouldn't see him again for a long time. She had known that before, but only now was it sinking, tearing her to pieces inside. Was the most painful torture she ever experienced. She would give it all forms of punishment just to hold him one more time, one more second, even if she admitted that she got punished for no complication. The conversation was her speaking out. The relationship was cut by people who used them like puppets. The heart ripped out and put back in wrong. She had no regrets for the relationship. She only felt regret for not fighting for it harder. The feeling of regret was unsinking now. Regret that she never saw him again. Regret she didn't notice the feelings soon enough so that they had more time. Regret for not trying to run away from the empire that changed him. Now as she let him go and watched him leave with a straight face, she felt that leaving him was wrong. Letting him go felt wrong. It hurt so much. And even though she showed no mercy anymore, nor did she knew he felt the same. He knew how she felt. It killed her more than she thought anything else would. 1 year later, she thought she'd saw evidence the night that they promised that they would tell each other nothing, the night that they promised they would never whisper about it, the night that they promised that no one else would find out what they'd done. She obviously hadn't held up her end of the other, as there was now a small child in arms. At first, when she found out about being sick for multiple weeks, she regretted not using protection or even being aware enough to think about it, but now she only felt love for the tiny human in arms, bottled in a tan big blanket, soft, quiet music, even just brought onto the child did not cry. And if she wasn't so grateful for it, she'd be worried. A boy, but not a few minutes old. He had brown hair like his father, and brown eyes that were so big she thought if they were only bigger he'd become a cyclops. He had her button nose and thin mouth. His cheeks bulged a little less than they should. His tiny body was smaller than a normal child. He only weighed a few pounds. She could not help but laugh because during those prime period of her pregnancy she'd gained 30 pounds. He was beautiful. Pietro Revanov. Her mind instantly supplied, and she smiled only to him. She let a few moments of bliss for the child, being close and reading her love. She'd make sure he was loved. Crossed her mind, and she couldn't help but imagine him kneeling next to her, touching the child. The their son's delicate face, smiling his gentle smile, his soft, gentle smile, as the baby gripped his finger, just as he did hers when she held it out for him to grab. Their fantasy was broken when the director came storming into the room, ruined them. She was furious. And to the child's credit, he never raised his voice as she crammed in, but he did continue mewing more intensely, expressing his discomfort. "Get rid of it," she demanded curtly. Expecting her to obey immediately, she looked up with defiant eyes. She brought the child closer to her chest. They've already discussed this, and she refused to take abortion medication. It wouldn't have worked anyways with her slightly enhanced body. They all mutually agreed that they would let her have the child, but they trained her very hard, and she was not excused from punishment still. Despite her poor condition her body was in, the child was still growing within her. Too stubborn to die, she felt proud of it, even if it had been unborn and left her weak. She never felt so weak. "I will not," she said simply. The director fured in anger. She must have thought she would kill her child, but in those 9 months of defiance was anything to go by. Natasha's behavior when she was a fool to believe she wouldn't protect her baby of her life. You cannot take care of a child and continue training us backward. I will not let this disgrace of our standards roam among us. Kill it, she said quickly and frantically, her anger seeping into her voice, and she never knew the director used so much emotion in life. She glared, and only caused the anger in the room to increase. No, Natasha said quietly as she looked down at her child. He began to cry more tensely at the negative. "No," Natasha said quietly as she looked down at her child. He began to cry even more intensely at the negative atmosphere crowding around the room, and she no longer could help her anger towards the director for discomforting her child. "Madam," the director spoke up meekly. The director turned her vicious gaze to his hunched over form, which only seemed to serve to hunch over even more. She had admitted he had balls, even though it was because he wanted to sex the unborn baby. He was supportive of her pregnancy. She tried to avoid it, but he had become her personal OB. Now she looked upon Prating at the disgusting doctor, but he didn't look at her, only at his notes, avoiding the deadly gaze of the director. "This is the first child of 2 enhanced individuals. It can make an amazing soldier if nurtured properly, and we can condition him at birth. This had never been done before, as we've never had to deal with this issue," he argued in a place. She looked up to the director, who was seemingly and reluctantly mulling over it. "Fine," she allowed angrily and reluctantly, no doubt planning an intense training program in her mind, planning on ways of breaking her child before he even had a chance to build into something else. Something defiant. She hated how grateful she felt. This was horrible, but at least the child was alive. The doctor's smile was sickening. "But you are to train him, Talia. He is no one else's responsibility. I want updates every 2 weeks. Your training will increase in readiness as well. If I'm dissatisfied with his pace, he shall be terminated. You are allowed 1 month maternity, and then it will begin," she said. She laughed swiftly, this time composing herself in a second as she left the dentistry room. Natasha breathed a sigh of relief. 3 years later. Piotr was smarter than most kids his age. Natasha couldn't be more proud of him. She didn't hide her sense of pride from him either, always whispering praise when had people around, because praise to young children wasn't all but encouragement, and she spoke to him softly when in private their room. He had effectively learned Russian, French, German at once. They spoke in English when he was in her room, though just for a sense of Krasnoye. She knew that if he was here, if he knew of their son, he would support them. He would be happy and proud of their family. It made her heart ache sometimes, and Natasha wondered if Piotr would ever want to meet his father one day. Piotr loves to read. He was on first grade level on most of his math and science, which is incredible for a child of his age to be so illiterate. He wasn't even supposed to be reading. He was supposed to be learning the alphabet. He could crawl when he was 2 and getting on his legs when walking his way. So with walking, the doctors were pleased with the quick progress. The director was indifferent to it. Natasha loved telling him stories of all sorts, stories he didn't understand but still enjoyed. She told him stories about his father, how he loved him in the dark of the night of the room. She told stories of the dumb little things he did, and it would make him giggle, which was small and soft, and smile was so bright. She loved making him smile, just like how she loved making smile. She couldn't help her own smile when Piotr did it. Her little Piotr. "Ma," he said to her one day after training. Piotr always watched her train, his eyes following her graceful movements as he observed. He always watched her, so he knew what he would be doing when he was older. It taught him how to fight without actually fighting. She told the director that he actually started fighting when he was 5. The age normal kids would have mastered walking and running, and are able to walk and run without stumbling. Natasha hates the fact that Piotr has to watch her, even if he doesn't know the meaning of violence. She doesn't want to influence his life at such a young age. "Yes, Piotr?" She asked back, a small smile forming on her face. They were in her room, so it was okay. He asked questions a lot, but mostly to her in her room. He learned that he was scorned and never asked much to the doctors or trainers, but Natasha encouraged him to ask questions. Seems as if he inherited her curiosity, and she did not want to stuff out that intelligent night for as long as she could maintain it. "Why am I not allowed to talk when you're dancing?" he asked in a childish and sweet voice. She looked at him sadly. He thought she was dancing. He almost like a dancer. She couldn't help but smile. He was really his father's child. It made her love him even more than when he said and did things along the lines of his father. Made her love him and hurt her just a bit, but it was okay. It was almost like a piece of was with her when she was with Piotr. "It's because I need to concentrate. I cannot concentrate when I have such a cute little spider distracting me." She tickled him in a way that made him laugh. She smiled. She called him a little spider because when he read a book about spiders, he found the Black Widow spider classification page. He seems more invested in that page than any of the other ones. He knew that Natasha was called the Black Widow, and it melted her heart, and it made her laugh when he asked if she was pot spider. But you're graceful like one, Mama." "Then I guess I had to make you my little spider." It's okay now. She was okay when she was with Piotr, just like when she was with "I love you, Piotr," she said softly. "I love you too, Mama." Piotr replied instantly by snuggling near her where she was sitting. She pulled him closer to her chest and kissed the top of his head. Everything was okay now. A week later, it wasn't. The director banged into the room. She hadn't even noticed her standing up from her sitting position. Piotr looked over when he was reading next to her by the foot of the bed. On the floor, he looked scared, but had not learned yet how to suppress his emotion. She wished he never had to learn. She wished that they could express and act freely like normal kids. The director glared at him, but then a sly, foreboding smile crossed her face. Natasha couldn't help a feeling of dread, a sense of deja vu. By the time she knew what was going to happen, it was too late. The director strode across the room in a few paces, caught Piotr off the floor before she could say or do anything, before she could lunge to try and take back a child. Trainers had the hands holding her back as the director walked out of the room. She punched and kicked and ran, but she could not fight off all the trainers in time. Could only watch through her restraints as Piotr got taken farther and farther away. Piotr didn't make a sound. He didn't scream, yell, or cry. She was proud of him for being so brave. And when, if not, she got back, she'd praise him for it. She'd love him for it, love him for being himself. But it broke her heart as she picked up Slice's voice. "Mama?" It was soft, terrified, and echoed longer in her heart than it did the whole way. He was scared. She had to protect him. relocating him, they told Natasha simply, fighting her to stay down, and only made her increase her effort to get her child. I am his mother, she said fiercely in English, defending a child that was no longer her side. She needed him by her side. She wouldn't let him go, not like she did with... She'd fight for this love because she understood that she had to fight for love, and she wasn't going to watch a child be taken away from her without putting a damn good one. That doesn't matter, they responded in English as well. She felt like a lot of anger in her heart. They were so heavily accented that she punched one of them when Piotr was outside. She didn't stop punching when she was gone. Her vow became a promise. Piotr does not like the new place they brought him to. It was dark and dirtier than where he and Mama was. This place didn't have his mama. It was scary without her because people that hadn't really mean. They didn't smile at him. And when he smiled at them, the people Mama did smile at him, only smiled when they had enough knives, scalpels, when he sat to the table of irritating lights flash, filling his only part of the room in the middle. He didn't like the smells. They weren't safe like his mama's. He wanted his mama, and somehow he knew he'd never see her again, or at least for a very long time. Somehow he knew, and that made him sad. Sad was emotion, and Mama said emotions were okay, but only when they were in with her. But they weren't in their room, and Peter didn't like being sad. It made him feel not good, and Mama always made it better when you're sad. But Peter sad was really big this time, and they weren't in their room, and he didn't know if he could wait until he was in his room with Mama alone again. These new mean people were just mean with him as the old mean people. But he felt lonely because Mama wasn't there with him. And these new mean people, when he was alone, and he was so sad, and it was so much worse when Mama was there with him. He never ever felt lonely, even when she couldn't talk to him or he couldn't talk to her. She still made him happy somehow. He knew he shouldn't cry. The old mean people didn't like it when he made noise or showed emotion. Crying and laughing were doing both, and they got very mad at him when he did those things. So he tried not to cry, and these new people probably didn't like it when he made noise or showed emotion either. It stung his eyes, but he didn't cry, not even a little. Maybe if he was good, then he could see Mama sooner. He made sure he'd be extra good then. For Mama. They brought him to a room with white walls and white floor. It wasn't like Mama's in his room because there was no bolted window and the grey walls in the room and had books. It was nearly nothing in this room. There was a mat and a beat-up bedside table with no drawers. The door was wooden like Mama's, but metal and looked heavy, like a door to a cell. There was also a toilet in the closet, but there was a cot, and someone was on the cot. That someone wasn't his Mama. A man with a metal arm and long brown hair, brown eyes, looked up from where he was staying as Piotr was tossed in by new mean people. The man looked haggard, and his face was blank, but it didn't look mean like everyone else did. It also just didn't look nice like Mama's was. It looked indifferent, uninterested. It was better than snarls and sneers, so Piotr counted it as a blessing. They sat at each other for a while, never breaking eye contact. His wide eyes stare, reflecting back at him and break uninterested ones. They didn't say anything. The man didn't speak to him as he turned over, and Piotr didn't say anything to him because Mama told Piotr not to say anything to anyone. Piotr creeped cautiously into the room, making sure not to make loud movements because sometimes the mean people didn't like when he was loud and moving. He went to the opposite end of the room in the corner of the man, never took his eyes off him. Mama always told Piotr to be on guard and watch out for dangers when she wasn't with them. She told him to always keep his eyes on a threat or unknown, especially in a new environment, to never let his eyes off them. The man was not a threat right now, but he was unknown, and he was in a new environment, so Piotr couldn't take his eyes off him for a second. They sat like this for hours until the lights turned on with a loud echoing click, like there had been a lot of lights off for at once. The sound echoed in Piotr's ears longer than it echoed. The man just turned and went to sleep, Piotr hesitated. He waited for Mama. He let himself cry in the darkness, lack of light covering his tears. He didn't sniff or make noise. He made sure the tears soaked up his shirt rather than fall on the floor. He really missed his Mama. The lights came back on a really long time later. So did the man. He sat up on the bed, looked at Piotr again. this time a flash of surprise were on his face. Piotr was tired and he felt heavy and laggy. He didn't think he went to sleep when he blinked too long, but he didn't want to sleep without Mama. Mama always meant he was safe, and he wasn't safe here. He didn't move from his spot all the time the lights were off, but at this time the tears had erased the evidence from his face, or at least he hoped. So the mean people came back, and the man with the metal arm stood up and followed, even though he wasn't told to. One mean man stood back and picked him up by the right arm, roughly twisted weird and kind of hurt. Piotr didn't dare complain. They put him to a window, and it was a bit dirty and looked like a room that was nearly black and had no windows. There were a bunch of cages like fences making a circle or a flimsy door of this same thing with a chain lock on it. Piotr was told to watch as a man with a metal arm fought 20 people at once. It was like Mama's dancing, except more blood. 1 year later, Natasha was on a mission. It wasn't like the one the Red Room gave her. Every time they sent her out now, they made sure never let her do it for anyone else. But it was okay, because that's how she liked it. It was how it was supposed to be from the beginning. It wasn't like the one time she had her heart ripped out. Not once, but twice. Now Soul missions were good. It was easier for her to find a child. She had no teammates pestering her about her whereabouts. And her mission wasn't to the Red Room. Her loyalty to that place became as flimsy as a piece of paper. Her mission was to keep her promise and find her son. Maybe even her father. Maybe even his father. But her first priority was her son. If we're here, he would drop everything and sacrifice to help. She knew it. The director said wherever they went, they had killed him for not being good enough. It made her furious because Piotr was better than enough. He was everything. She didn't believe that shit for a second. Piotr was too stubborn to die. She knew firsthand that he presumed when even everyone scorned him, only focusing on her positive energy. It was like he could do anything with a small bit of constant encouragement and praise. She was so proud and relieved that he had that at that because she hadn't shown how much pride she really had for a son. He was all she needed, and Natasha would be damned if she failed him now. Oh, when he needed her most in his 4 years of living, he would be 4 years old. The director didn't tell Natasha where they shipped her son off to, and Natasha hadn't let that deter her. This was a big world, and she would stop till every inch of it was covered to find her son. The Red Room was built on lies and death. Sometimes throughout the year, Piotr was gone. She wondered if she did the right thing, keeping the baby instead of getting an abortion. She didn't regret having Piotr when he was with her, but at the same time she did, especially when she saw him smile. She brought an innocent child into the world under horrifying conditions and circumstances, conditions that would break him more than anything in this world, conditions that were more terrifying than death, but Piotr didn't know that. He would know that people were actually nice and that they helped and had families of them. Piotr probably thought that the quiet immune sneeze would just have things were, and Natasha was the odd one out. It was heartbreaking. She wondered if he missed her, or even remembered her at this point. God, she missed him so much. Like, she wanted to cuddle him and hold him tight and never let him go. Focus all of her love on him in the tiny world with no room for such emotion under all the blood that drowned them. Shield him from the bad things, even though they were surrounded by every turn. Cover his eyes when people died, even though she was the one pulling the trigger. Would he become a killer? Natasha didn't like that one bit. Piotr was too pure to kill. Too cautious to do it without any hesitation, or did he just think killing was normal too? That causing other people's pain was just part of life. She was in Venezuela when she was hacking through different organization record of Hydra and other small underground groups that may have a child. The director had given him to one of her allies, or maybe just threw him out on the streets somewhere far away. She found absolutely nothing again. She wasn't giving up. She could never give up. This was just part of the fight. She shut the laptop and walked out of the private office that once had one man in it and now had a dead corpse. To get to the light elevator, Hold the elevator, said Annette. Man, she didn't move as he squeezed a little out of breath. Thanks, he murmured sarcastically as he started down. The only noise was horrid elevator music was starting to interrogate her. She was already in a bad mood, having been in this source. When the elevator reached 420, he spoke again. So what's pretty assassin like you doing here? He spoke in a low, funny tone, as if it was more annoying if there wasn't for the hint of seriousness in him. The usher glanced at him. He wasn't surprised. He was Hawkeye, a SHIELD agent. She'd be dumb not to know he was. She wasn't surprised SHIELD was here. They'd been after for years. You here to kill me? She asked slowly. No mockingness in her voice, just quiet promises and threats. Even if Porsche was infamous in the underground spy world for her sniping abilities, Natasha was pretty fairly sure that the Black Widow could beat him in hand-to-hand. Could beat him if he tried to run. Snipers usually run faster. No. That was dim. She let the slight surprise stay in her head as a no. They usually go for the throat by now. If he wasn't, she would in the next 3 seconds. So he better make a case fast because she really didn't want to have to go to stairs because of corpses in the elevator. You saved a lot more people. She shrugged. It was on him if he didn't kill her right now. She could kill countless more in missions that didn't even exist. The missions that she would be on until she temporarily on until she found a son. Anything for Piotr. That's what my boss said. I agree. But I think it's a different call if you tell me what's in your drive in your pocket. He shifted, she said, and she shifted a little, but didn't speak. He side-eyed her, like she might actually let this man kill off such important things at stake. And this drive wasn't for the Red purposes. Tells me you weren't supposed to go after it. He was good. This would probably interesting. They were silent for the rest of the ride down. The elevator dinged and let them at the bottom floor. And he said one last thing. Whatever you're looking for, I might be down to help, he said. And slipped a piece of paper into her pocket discreetly. She was on for a second, but didn't let it show. And what he was playing at, probably a trap for her. Either that or he was typed. Whatever one it was, she would be the idiot for taking up the offer. She threw it away after memorizing it. The soldier and the child didn't talk for weeks, even as the soldier was dragged out to be put on assignments, even as the child was dragged out to be tested on, even as they trained together, even as they ate in the same room, even as they liked to put out and they both couldn't sleep. Dr. Parker, that was the name of Piotr's doctor. He told him the name on the day after watching the man with the metal arm dance. They called it fighting, though. No one told Piotr their names before. He wasn't a nice man. He opened Piotr up and stuck needles in him. He hacked him and electrocuted him. Piotr didn't like when he had to see him. The lab table was cold, colder than the one in the place where his mama was. The needles made him sick, with headaches and nausea. They never did that before, but what Piotr didn't like the most was that they said his name wrong in an American accent that was supposed to sound like German. It was terrible and left a bad taste in his mouth. He never liked the German language, so maybe he's biased. He liked Mary, though. Mary Parker was Mr. Parker's wife, and he said his name like Mama did. Piotr. He liked it when Mama was testing him, when Mary was testing him, because she brought him books and let him talk to her if he had questions about math. She didn't strap him to a table and didn't yell at him for making noise. She smiled like Mama did, but a bit different. So Piotr didn't ask about the no immersion rule, which seemed to be common sense here, but Mary never got mad when he was a little happy, because sometimes she got a little happy too, but sometimes she got sad, and Piotr would hold her hand gently like Mama did when he was sad, and she would be happy again on her face, but Piotr could tell she was sad on the inside, but that's okay, because Piotr was sad on the inside too. She said he was smart, and he was happy because not a lot of people were nice to him ever. She spoke to him in English like Mama did. He likes Mary Parker. It was a bit of routine now. Piotr could expect certain things to happen, like at least a little bit of training with Soldier, a little bit of testing with Mary. Sometimes testing with Mary would be replaced with testing with Dr. Parker in the doc lab, and the training would be short so he could spend more time with Dr. Parker. He didn't really like Dr. Parker. In between testing in training, he got food, and after the second part of the day, he got food again, but this time in the room with Soldier, and then they had a little bit of long time before the lights went out. When he got to the room with the Soldier after training every day, they were instructed to eat. They ate stale bread, mush, and water, just like every meal. Sometimes Peter couldn't eat because of needs, or today that time had been replaced when Dr. Parker replaced Mary, but today was a little worse than all the others, and sometimes it's happening, but it was happening a lot more now, and left Pierre so sick that he didn't want to eat, but when he did eat fast, he took all the food away and didn't give it back to the next meal, and then it'd be gross slimy because it was the same food, and he'd go hungry, and he'd sick, and when sick was over, and hunger pains wasn't something he liked very much. They had to long, even when no one punched him or hit him. Sometimes he couldn't do anything but lay and hear his tummy ask for food, and when it did that, it hurt even more. The fifth time he couldn't eat the food, the men of the mental one got up from the cot wherever they were in the room. The men never got up from the cot, only when they had to leave or come in or get the food, they throw near the door. But sometimes when Pierre wasn't too tired, he would bring it because it was a nice thing to do. He took his plate and went to the cot to eat. Peter didn't make a move. His stomach hurt too much to even flinch. The man stared at him, and Piotr closed his eyes. He could still feel the gaze. He heard something for Piotr's eyes shot open. He watched a man grab Piotr's food, going to the cot, sat in front of him, and started eating Piotr's food. Good, at least he was going to go waste, and he wouldn't get that slimy mush and really hard bread. But the man just finished the mush and the water and blood. He split the bread in half and handed it to Piotr with blank eyes, and Piotr knows fast your expectation. Piotr looked at the food and shook his head. The man pushed water to him, and Piotr shut his eyes. Stale bread was normally ordered less, but the scent seemed very strong, and it made Piotr's stomach even angrier. Open your eyes, kid, he said in English. It was rough and almost demanding, but it was a hint of gentleness that only came into Mary and Mama's English. Piotr could understand him, and it was so shocked. Not a lot of people spoke English in this place. He opened his eyes, and the vending bread was still in front of him. He started his words in English, and the man decided to close his eyes for a second, correcting himself, which was also weird, because everyone else just let himself be mad with Piotr, except for Mary and Mama. But they never got mad with Piotr. Yeah, but you need to, he said. He kept holding out his hand with the bread, and after a little bit of time, Piotr took it and nibbled on it. He kept sipping the water, which made him feel a bit better when he drank it slowly, but he was too slow when the mean men come back with the bread, and half an inch water was taken from the man, went back to his cot, and Piotr went back to his mat, waiting for the lights to go out. Right, finally, the man touched half that bread towards Piotr and landed on the mat beside Piotr's head. Piotr finished it by morning. 1 year later. Over the year, Piotr and the man got going close, so he figured a few things out. As Mary said, he was smart. This place, one where he was in now, was Hydra, and the man with the metal arm that slept with him and helped him a little when he got sick was also known as the Winter Soldier, and according to whispers, they called Piotr his kid or his son behind their back. Piotr heard the Winter Soldier didn't seem to. He didn't understand that part though. Another thing he learned, although no one said it, Piotr just figured out, the Winter Soldier did not like being called a Winter Soldier. When Peter asked what he should call him, the soldier just stared at him for a moment, confused, as if no one asked him that question before. You can call me Piotr, he whispered in the dark one night. But you don't like being called the Winter Soldier. He knew the soldier heard him by how he tensed. The soldier never answered or called him by name for a long time, so Piotr never called him by his name, because he didn't like it either. They never addressed each other properly, but somehow that was okay for them. When he was finally allowed to have books in the room, Mary fought for him, and he was really happy. He was only allowed one book in the room. He could read it in the room for the Winter Soldier after they finished food, or with Mary when she was going his test. But Piotr sometimes had to read the books in the dark after the light went out, and sometimes he stayed up too late when the soldier would take the book away and tell him to go to sleep. Piotr read them constantly, as much as he could whenever he could. Sometimes the soldier would look over sort of curiosity and tried to be sneaky. Piotr caught him every time though. When it happened, he would get up and sit next to the soldier and read the book in a whisper near the cot, translating into English no matter what language it was. He spent more time relaxed when people talked in English, but it was only with Piotr. No one besides Mary or Dr. Parker knew English, and Dr. Parker didn't like speaking English, and he doesn't think soldier knew Mary, or maybe he'd have his own books too. The soldier would go out more than Piotr did, like outside. Piotr was never allowed to see because boys read about. They said he went for missions. By the time he came back, he'd be confused and not recognize him for a few hours. That was a long time apparently before he did, and he still didn't talk to Piotr even after that. Peter went to the soldier said one day, and Piotr looked up. He said in an American accent, although he said the name Piotr perfectly in Russian like he did. He rather liked his American accent. It was nice. It was calm and gentle. It's easy to say in English. It took him a second to realize it was his own name just in English. It was kind of cool. Peter. He liked it. It was a nice thing they had. Soldier didn't smile that much, and when he did, it was only in the room. It was small and almost not there, but it was genuinely happy, and Peter noticed every time he did. It was soothing like he did, but not how he liked books or asking questions. He liked it how he liked Mary's and Mama's. Peter decided he liked the soldier too. 1 year later, soldier was acting weird when he came back from mission. It was like any other mission, except this time he wasn't prepared. Usually a soldier had to be for a mission, but recently he hadn't been to get prepped. They dragged him out of the room, and then they'd come back only minutes later to get something. But Piotr could tell soldier wasn't soldier. But they haven't been doing so well. But I haven't been doing it as often lately. And Peter suffered the backlash of his choice. When soldier got back, he wouldn't go to the court or pat Peter's head when he passed. Peter was reading a book to get attention. The soldier would pace the room, muttering all the languages Peter did know and didn't know, walked right past Piotr as if he didn't even exist. When he wasn't passing, he was screaming at the door, which was after light. Sometimes he'd even hit the door. He wouldn't stay in his coat ever, wouldn't eat even if they brought food. And Peter was being good at eating too. He wouldn't sleep either. Even when the lights went on, Peter was trying to sleep. It became a pattern that was messing up all the little good moments in Peter's life. In between training and testing with Dr. Parker, which was becoming more constant now, and Peter didn't like it at all. He didn't get to see Mary often. The soldier was acting scary. When the soldier muttered, Peter couldn't concentrate on his book. When the soldier paced, Peter lost his appetite. When the soldier yelled, Peter couldn't sleep. When the soldier was awake, Peter had to train extra hard the next day, even though he was even more tired than the soldier. Sometimes the soldier stayed more because he got less missions because he was screaming so much. Peter hated that he wanted the soldier to go on a mission, but just a little one that wouldn't make this worse. Just so he could get some sleep, just for a little. Peter wanted to help the soldier, but every time he started the pace to help the door, Peter was frozen. Even all of his thoughts left him, and all of his emotions just started to fill his body, which was bad enough, but all the emotions started to feel was bad and scary. It made him mad, and at the same time, he didn't like those feelings because they didn't make him feel good. He couldn't move. It was like when he was paralyzed, like with the stuff Dr. Parker used when Peter moved too much on the cold table so he could make him stop moving. Except there was no liquids or needles. He didn't get hurt, just scared. Peter hated it more than when Dr. Parker made him freeze. They never removed soldiers' weapons. When he finally did realize this, he started shooting the door with his big gun. The door was bulletproof. The gunfire hurt Peter's ears because it was so loud and close. The smoke made his eyes full of tears, but he wasn't allowed to shed. It made him cough a lot when there was no more bullets. Please stop, Peter whimpered once. The soldier roared at him, eyes crazy, and walked over to him in a way that made Peter scared. from boating was a correct word. He never felt so terrified to see an emotion besides indifference in the soldier's eyes. This one was wild, panicked, and almost insane. Peter grabbed my shoulders and lifted him. You can't trust them. You can't trust any of them. You can't even trust yourself, he hissed. And Peter whimpered again. He didn't know whether it was good because the grip was too tight or the voice was scary, but he was thrown back. He felt himself shake with uncontrollable fear. What did he mean? He never spoke when the soldier was yelling and shooting at the door again. He never spoke in front of the soldier anymore, period. Not in training or when he was eating, especially not when he was quiet. Peter didn't want to ruin it. He just needed the peace and silence to last as long as it could. Peter told himself that it was his smoke from the gas that made the gunfire that made him cry, and only when it was dark did he let the tears fall and pretend they didn't exist. He knew it was a lie. Let me out, you son of a bitch! Let me out and take me from this hell. There isn't anything here, you know. That's worth a damn. Do you hear me? Just put a bullet in my head. The soldier screamed, and Peter started to cry, even though there was no smoke and it wasn't dark. It was really bad today. Please, no, Peter said quietly, and the soldier turned on him, eyes wide, and Peter was scared, and the soldier looked even more scared and pulled his gun, pointed it at Peter. Everything stopped. They stared at each other like they did on first day meet. Peter was scared. He was scared because his mama was gone. Now he was scared and sad, and because the soldier was gone too. And the soldier didn't take his gun away from Peter's temple, even as the guards poured in. Only did he take the gun away when he was dragged out. Even then, Peter didn't move. He just kept crying. Soldier's terrified eyes looked at him like he was trying to gasp something he couldn't hold on to. Peter never saw the soldier again. This was a bad, stupid, crazy idea. It was probably one of the worst ones in her entire life. She didn't actually give a shit about it. Usually she wasn't so frantic about impulsive decisions, but it's been nearly 2 years since she last saw Piotr. It felt like an eternity. No one in the Red Room was going to help her because they fucking thought Piotr was a disgrace. The rector wouldn't help her. She took him away in the first place and pulled bullshit telling her that he was dead. She didn't have any outside connections. She wasn't sure where she didn't even know where even was. Shield might help if not them. Then Clint Barton had actually offered to help her, anything for Piotr, she told himself, and steeled her expression as she walked into the cafe and sat next to Clint at the end of the bar. She was just going to talk to him, see if this was a trap or a ploy, see if he was actually genuine about his offer to help her. No questions asked, which was fishy because she was running out of options here. He smirked and put down his menu. I'm not telling you what I'm trying to find, she said immediately. He didn't seem surprised. She was a bit relieved that this could be so casual and quick. Wow, you're quick, he said, commenting on the fact that it had only been 3 days. She was desperate. I thought you were more loyal to your cause or whatever, he teased, and she looked at him and shrugged nonchalantly. Never had any other option, she said honestly, and ended the conversation swiftly. But I know people just don't give out handouts for free. She narrowed his eyes at him, suspiciously trying to throw him off the game. He turned and shrugged nonchalantly. Got a hunch, but I think you're a nice person, he laughed, and she was a little stunned at the accusation. Crazy, right? Yeah, it was. You in the right mind would call the Black Widow a highly trained assassin who had no problem killing anyone nice. You're right, I'll help you. I'll keep you a little secret search on the radio if you switch sides. There it was, the catch. But join Shield. Was he crazy? There were so many reasons she should say no. Saying yes wouldn't have been a consideration, not for a second, but she was more loyal to Piotr than whatever bullshit the Red Room had planned for. And then she thought about Piotr when she finally found him, how you'd have a moment that didn't kill good guys, a place where that wasn't so terrible and terrifying to live, a mama that helped people and showed him the kindness of the world, even though the black nasty things out there. And tossed to the side, it was her time to push it. fuck it, anything for Piotr. 1 year later. Mary wasn't Hydra. Pierre found this out when she was running towards an almost futuristic-looking plane, like one from his fantasy books, like that one book, Divergent, but like the ones in the last book. He didn't wait, like the last book is a bit anticlimactic. He was dropped in the plane for carrying him out of the compound like a sack of potatoes. A man with thinning hair led him inside, barking orders to everyone but him, placing a gentle hand on his back as he led him to the plane. He looked back to ask where Mary was, but like magic, Mary was gone too. He never saw her again, and somehow he used to feel a big feeling for every time he was losing someone. He just knew. He hated that feeling a lot more than he hated anything else. He wanted to know it. Tell it was wrong. She would come back, and so would Mama and Soldier. Even in that moment where he was denying everything as Mary Parker left the plane, he knew he would never see her again. Mama, Soldier, now Mary. 3 out of 3. That was 100%. Peter wasn't stupid. He knew that everything had. He lost it all. He felt more alone than ever before because when the organization called S.H.I.E.L.D. took him in, as he found out 2 hours into the plane through eavesdropping, and their bird logo. Yeah, their bird logo. Was that an eagle? It was neat. It was not an hour before a man with thinning hair, they called him Colton, came to him in his room cell thing, not like Hydra cell room thing. This one only had a metal table and cuffed him to the table. He wasn't allowed to leave it. He'd never had his own room before, so by deception, it was a cell. Colton opened the door and looked at him as he gestured to follow him to another cell, but this one was darker, had a hexagon patterns on the walls, and the metal table this time was with 2 chairs. They sat down on either end of the table. Colton looked a bit too excited for this interrogation. That's what it was, right? Because he was with Hydra. And a small smile and a weird smile on his face. Not like Mama's or Soldier's or Mary's. Not like the doctor's either. His smile said that he was hiding something, but wasn't as creepy as the ones on Hydra base. It was barely except for a smile. Peter validated. "Hello, I'm Phil." Colton said a bit guilty. He was nervous, which was weird too, because Peter was usually the nervous one when having a conversation with adults of unknown origin. "I'm excited. I've never talked to a child soldier before." Peter didn't answer, just nodded head. What's a child supposed to be like important to S.H.I.E.L.D.? Peter never read anything important. Had never been anything important to anyone ever, at least not that he knew of. Phil seemed to pause his lack of answer. "Do you speak English?" Bill asked, cooked his head side like Peter sometimes did when asking a question there. He decided not to say. A nod. "Great. Are you ready?" No one ever asked them that. He nodded again, in fear of the wrong answer, because if he said the wrong answer, he might get punched. "Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions." Peter nodded again. Coldly and shortly, they began. "Okay. Let's start with your name." Phil moved into a comfortable position that made it seem like he let his guard down, but the tension in his hand and shoulders gave him away. "Was this a test?" Shuffling papers around and holding up a pen to a yellow pad of yellow paper with lines across him. It's easy to say English, Peter," he said slowly, sounding out the word he only said once before, since Phil seemed to speak English to all of his audience and came and spoke it naturally to Peter. He just guessed Phil would be more comfortable with Peter when Peter spoke his name in English too, just so it was easy for him. "Any last name?" Peter shook his head instantly. Phil nodded and wrote it down. Should he be lying? But these people seemed like the type to see through his eyes. "Age?" Phil asked hopefully. Peter had to think on that for a second. "6, he muttered, sounding unsure, most because of what Barry had told him in 2 months. He didn't know how he remembered, but Peter remembered lots of things he wasn't supposed to. Number changes though, sometimes in August, but it still changed every year. "Are you sure?" Peter shrugged. "That's what Mary said said 2 months ago, he informed him slowly. He must have taken back his voice because at the higher volume it sounded raspy. He didn't use it much after the soldier left, and Mary started to replace Dr. Park and served the other way round. "You're being awfully compliant," Phil said skeptically. Looking up at him as he wrote that down too. Peter nodded but didn't answer. Mary had handed him off to Phil, so obviously Mary trusted him. Peter wouldn't trust Phil, but he owed it to Mary to answer the questions honestly. "You were raised in Hydra?" Peter nodded. After a second, he could barely remember being raised by his mama. "To be a soldier?" And I know. "Do you know how to fight?" A shrug. He'd been trained by a soldier. When soldier left, he was still being trained, but with meaner people who didn't pull the punches like soldier did sometimes. They just knocked him on his ass. "I'm gonna need an answer," Phil said, almost apologetically. It took Peter by surprise. No one had just met him was ever this nice to him. Why was Phil being so nice? Did he want something? Or if he wanted something, why not just beat out of Peter? Why ask him all these questions nicely rather than just demanding him? Despite all the answers, he quite like that he didn't have to get hurt to answer them. It felt nice. "A little," he answered, a stunned but relaxed tone in his voice. He didn't want to let his guard down because he was in a new environment and Phil was an unknown. "Okay, so it's okay if you don't know this, but why did Hydra take you?" Phil says, and he keeps getting nicer, which is weird, but he could tell that this is an awkward topic for Phil. Peter answers as best he could because Phil has been so nice. "I'm not sure. I think I know what they were going to do with me." Phil leans forward as a non-verbal gesture to encourage him to go on. "They've been experimenting on me, giving me, or at least trying to give me powers. I don't think it's worked though." Colton leaned back. Look on his face. Peter was shifting in his seat nervously. There was a long stretch of silence where Phil didn't write anything on his paper or said anything. Peter was not given permission to speak until Phil finally spoke. "Okay, I think I know who to get then. A year later, Natasha was an Avenger. She had first became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., given many as the Red Room secret that she could. In reward, she became Clint's partner for most missions. Due to her skill set and ability to she quickly became one of Fury's most reliable agents. She immediately thought what Piotr would think about her as soon as she joined the team of heroes. Wouldn't he be happy? Would he be mad? Would she have to fight him if he's still in an enemy organization? Would she even know if it was him? He would be 7 now. She never forgot the day he was born. He had to look different. Natasha would have to work harder, but would he still want to hear her stories when he's older? Would she have so many more interesting ones to tell him, not just about who was still MIA, but her missions with Clint and interactions with Fury, and eventually her adventures with the Avengers. Maybe even the Avengers could help her. Clint had mentioned it to her in private after Loki's attack. She said she'll think about it. Clint never gave anything away, though, even not until she's ready. He never told anyone, even as they moved into town again with Stark and Rogers and Banner. Never even hinted at it, but she saw where he was coming from. Stark hacked into literally anything within seconds, and had so many back doors, Natasha couldn't even keep count. But Banner was smart and could run DNA scans. Steve, he's always been a soldier, but he would surely help. So would Thor, she knew. She just couldn't bring herself to tell them. Stark and Banner would ask too many questions. Steve and Thor would give her a kick puppy look if she didn't tell them. Clint understood because he was too a spy who had protected some form of his past, wherever that may be. For the past 2 years, he cared for her. He gave nothing away and went on nearly every mission with her just to help her. But it was not just her mission but others bring together. He made jokes and she never laughed. He tried to compliment her. She hit her every time. He tried to get her to open up. She wouldn't forever crack. He had every right not to help her, not even to trust her. And then he goes and brings her to meet his secret family that only Fury knew about. He surprised her in every way. She may not love him like but she loves him like family nonetheless. He was like an annoying, sensitive brother, and Natasha fiercely hoped that Piotr got to meet him one day. He would be such a good uncle and role model. He knew that Quinn would love her son too. That's when she started to do little things like make too much cocoa when she stayed awake at night, or accidentally tipped some glitter onto the vents so it blew all over Fury's desk, or just rolled her eyes when he made a joke instead of recommended him. In her defense, they were really bad jokes, and she refused to laugh at dad jokes. "Why don't you tell me about your family?" she asked in hushed tones in Sark's living room when there was no one there. It was an air of privacy and show of respect. He looked up from his comic book. "Which, what the fuck, dude? You have kids." "I trust you, Nat," he said simply, and that was a punch to the gut. Okay, yeah. Somewhere deep inside her, she trusted him too, but she hadn't even told him about or Piotr. He'd given her so much, she felt like she owed him, and he knew it was stupid and that he expected nothing of her, but that's just how these feelings go. "Piotr," she said, and he looked up confused, but since this was serious, I put the comic book down. He was always good at reading her, just like she was good at reading him. "I'm looking for Piotr Rovanoff. He's my son," she said in a near whisper. She almost thought she hadn't spoken at all, but when she looked up to see Clint staring at her, she didn't look him in the eyes and averted them to decide. She hadn't spoken about Puritans in so many years. It was like leaving her of some weight on her shoulders, and also repeatedly punching her in the gut with sadness and remorse. He was taken when he was free. They said he was dead, but Clint dropped his book. In 2 strides, he was by her side, hugging her. She laughed at, even hugged back slightly, but did not let tears fall. The next thing was said even softer, whispering, gripping even firmer. "They lie." Peter hated his general. Phil was really nice, but the man he handed Peter to wasn't. Phil said that they were different from Hydra, but they did the same things. They were exactly the same as Hydra. Peter hated it. Phil said that General Corton could help him get a better home. He also said he'd take him to Mary's sister, May, and that they take him in, but Phil lied to him. He was nice. His nice wasn't deceiving nice. Corton did not have his best interests at heart, and certainly did not want to take the Mayor Parker. As soon as Clint left, the iron room with General Corton became one of a predator seeking, and Peter did not like it one bit. "So, Peter," he said in a sickly sweet tone, a tone that was not at all sweet, "you under this term immigrant." Peter only nodded, backing up a few paces, heading down. "Use your words, soldier." Corton's voice did not have that false, sweet tone anymore to it. It was aggressive, and it made Peter snap to attention, hands behind his back, spine straight, head up, just like he did in Hydra. Corton had a poorly white smile, not like the gross green ones, yellow green ones in the Hydra structures have, but it was just as creepy as theirs was. When people are not born in citizens, they are not citizens coming in, he summarized in a monotone. Peter Corton looked downright giddy, not like Phil had. He looked like the creepy kind of giddy. "Yes, and your aunt lives in America, from which you are not a citizen. Do you know what that makes you?" He he asked and walked forward to lean into his ear. He froze when Colton's hot breath made his neck tingle. "That makes you an immigrant," he said, in a voice that sounded like that sounded disgusting. Peter didn't see anything wrong with it. Colton stood up, and usually you get your VISA, but since you're a minor and don't have any verifications like a birth certificate, you have to go through a different way, Colton said, and Peter didn't dare speak in a fear of angering a superior. Now, usually the government would give you an exemption being a war prisoner and all, but you are also a mutant. "I'm not a mutant," so I was. Peter's timid correction was cut off by a harsh, intense glare. "You will not speak out. You were a child soldier. You are a mutant." Disgusting words that you will serve in the United States Special Forces, complicated with a temporary visa each year, so you can go to school for 9 months of the year. General Colton whispered bitterly, "This will be off the books. I do not need a shield breathing down my back. But this opportunity is too great to pass up," he muttered almost to himself, but it was too loud. Peter was cowering a little bit. General Colton looked him dead in the eyes and said in a voice that Peter dared not to defy, "Do you understand?" Peter only nodded. Wayne has seen a lot of messed up shit in his life. Coming from an abusive household, he'd been pretty messed up himself. What with his mother hitting him and locking him in a closet when she wasn't on drugs, and his uncle molesting him whenever his mother didn't give a shit, which was all the time. School wasn't a sanctuary if you knew that Wayne was abusing teachers, students. Hell, even Stick Joe, the guy at the gas station 6 miles out of town, knew what went down in the Wilson household nearly every night. No one gave a shit. Wayne went right back with not giving a shit about them either. That mindset carried when he left school for army. He didn't want to get no grade. He was smart enough to, and he still didn't give a shit about that either. He did have a sense of humor. Messed up, twisted, but in any situation, no matter how dire, he could find a joke, no matter how controversial. It was no place for the Army in Canada. Still no place when he transferred to the US Army Special Forces. So Mike got in his position. He didn't know how the fuck he did. He also didn't know who the fuck thought this was a good idea, but here he was. Yes, Wayne had been a lot of messed up shit, but none of them was as twisted and messy as Peter Parker. Yes, Peter Parker, the whole human soul thing, his entire existence was made up of other shit. This poor child would get nowhere in life because some motherfucker decided in the wrong place, wrong time, no protection, and proceeded to put him in a tiny cell to be tortured by people who were in charge of him. Now he was in charge of him. A skinny small stick with brown hair and 2 big eyes. He was 7. He looked like a 4-year-old and had a sense of at least a 17-year-old. Too shut up at all times. Good survivor serial kid. He might actually live through this. Wayne didn't want to remember his age or name. He never did for anyone on any squad he went on, and he got trumps a lot. But Peter Parker was a 17-year-old sunshine kid was printed in his head. His mind. He stared dumbly at the kid, and the kid stared right back. He was a fucking kid. What was he doing here with Wilson? He was holding guns and swords, like he just said. They were never on safety. He had no time to mess with that shit. Wayne, who swore too much to be legal. Wayne, who didn't know what fucking childhood was supposed to be like. No, he actually didn't know that. It was supposed to be white picket fence, 2 siblings, a golden retriever. Parker's life was more like Iron Bard's dead body and mean attack gods, although the kids somehow made any attack gods and a perfect domestic pet with one glance. Magic puppy kid. Why the fuck was he around people who have killed so many literal murders and pedophiles? The kid looked like he wouldn't harm a fly. Wayne's eyes traveled to the boy's wrist where whip marks and purpling handprints. He didn't stop staring into the boy, hid them under his 2 large sleeves because you know he was a stick. Wayne gave him a snarky smile. The kid looked at the smile for a second, almost like he was analyzing, and gave his own shy smile. Wayne blinked at that. What the fuck, Nuggets? They wanted Wayne to train them, they told him, to stay for the summer before going to school in the fall in New York. And frankly, that was just cold. Making the kid have friends and have a life, then have to deal with this shit, only to go back and act like he's completely not sad. Just going to Uncle Wayne. which, wouldn't be a traumatic experience, but a fun time with, chess and shit. He didn't actually know how to play Sudoku, much less checkers maybe. They practically made him a babysitter, which again, whom thought that it was a good idea? He would kill the bastard who did, cause this sweet, innocent child did not belong here. Milton or not, apparently not. Parker didn't have any but except that door but Bambi eye, and that's more than that's mind of his, like, stupidly smart. Like, he could probably solve a medium level Sudoku smart, but whatever. That fucking dude that's corrupting children, well, never did that. Let's give it a go. The kid didn't talk the first week, only gave Wayne 3 extra ration bars for the whole 7 days, which, what the fuck, the kid needed more, especially if he's a mutant, which was weird, because he never showed any signs of being mutant. Wayne gave him 3 and said he could have it if the kid needed more. He gave the kid some of his shit. The kid never asked. But the kid never asked. He seemed okay. Later he found out the kid separated by 2 weeks, like a little mouse. Adorable. Also, what the fuck? He survived winter. The kid should really teach class. I'm not a mutant, the first thing said. And Wayne looked at him. He was looking down, his voice so small and raspy it suited him, but also totally didn't. I don't have powers. He rubbed his hands on his wrist. Okay, Wayne said. He believed the kid. Way more than he believed. General asked that. The kid laughed, so he must have said that alone. Like, cool dude, thanks for not judging me. No problem. Wayne took him on missions, no matter how messy. Peter didn't flinch when he killed people. Peter didn't react, just looked at the blood bodies and shot them in the head. He was like fucking Hawkeye. He never took a second shot on target, ever. It was disturbing. His hand didn't even reach the trigger on its own. He had to use both because they were so small, like a kitten. This kid was all double animals rolled into one human being. I don't like killing, he muttered one night into Thor. He never asked why. He didn't get a shitty cot, just a fucking blanket and a mat. He seemed comfortable down there, though. When never offered, the kid wants me, he'd have to ask, which wasn't so bad. Little brats did all the time. Thing is, Peter wasn't a little brat. Normally, not even an ounce of brightness or complaining. He never asked for anything, ever. Then don't, Wayne answered. The kid seemed blatant and responses and jerks, which is all that Wayne's good for. He never needed to sugarcoat anything because this is a shitty role anyways, and the kid knew that. So despite not liking kids, he liked this one. They get mad when I don't, Peter said sadly. I'll kill them. You just knocked it down, Wayne offered. He didn't know why the kid should learn to do his own dirty tricks, but then again, he was also a kid. How do you not kill without? Peter asked, sitting up, his hand propped on his elbows, following his head. Wayne blew out breath. That wasn't right. Peter should know how not to kill. I'll show you. He picked up the kid like the kitten child he was, by a scalp of his way too big hoodie, and took him to the range. He didn't care if it was 2 a.m. They weren't going to sleep anyways. The kid was fucking smart. He got things in instinct. Wayne never had to repeat himself, and when Wayne praised him, he just smiled up at him with a big sunshine smile. He could take it off like a UV light and stared into them blinding. Kid was trying to make him blind. So you'll say again and cannot stress enough, what the fuck. Okay, that's the end of the recording. My throat is fucking killing me. I started recording at 12. It is now 4 in the fucking morning. It is about to be fucking 5. My throat is quite literally killing me. It hurts to talk. I ran out of water around 2 in the morning, and I couldn't go back out because my sister's sleeping in the fucking living room right now. And my parents, the door was open, I couldn't close it because my dog was sitting right there. And my throat, it just fucking hurts. So yeah, that's the entirety of chapter 3. I don't know when I'll post it, but yeah, see you later. Bye.